I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little more about the closing of the hatcheries, and it's something that concerns me. You know, one of those hatcheries, I'll disclose one of those hatcheries is in Potter County, so it's in the district that I represent, and it's a concern of many of my constituents. Talk a little bit more about how you came to that decision with those two hatcheries, specifically what you think you'll save by closing the two hatcheries, how you plan to adequately stock fish in areas that are served by those hatcheries.
Well, the decision was a difficult one because, and it wasn't made by choice, it was made by need. We looked ahead and saw that we could not afford to continue to do what we do. You know, those pension costs, healthcare costs, drove us to this decision. We didn't choose to do this ourselves. So I want to be perfectly clear that this wasn't our own decision. It was forced by others. But you know, the bills that come due in 2016, we have to pay. And in order to do that, unless we have other revenues to pay those bills, we have to cut expenses. So we looked internally across all program areas as to where we were going to cut expenses. And with hatcheries being a quarter of our expenses, that's one of the areas we had to look at very closely, because they're expensive. Those stock trout are expensive to raise, rear, and transport to the stream. So we looked at all our hatchery systems, and you know, one of the basic things is, you know, which hatcheries we looked at a cost analysis across all hatcheries and saw that, for example, Oswego, it costs more to raise a trout at Oswego than any other hatchery. And there's a couple reasons why that's true, is because Oswego is really supplied by water sources that get cold in the wintertime. And you can't raise trout when the water is cold. A lot of our other hatcheries have groundwater sources from limestone springs that stay stable throughout the course of the year. So as a result of that, that's why we aren't able to grow fish as efficiently at Oswego. It's not because of our staff or the way we feed fish, but it's because of the water temperatures don't allow us to grow fish at the same rate as they do for other hatcheries. So cost efficiency was one of the prime factors we looked at. We also looked at where we could save $2.5 million without closing or crippling all the hatchery system. So we didn't want to spread that pain around. So Oswego was chosen because of cost efficiency. Bellefonte was chosen because it was our most expensive hatchery, and we could achieve those cuts by closing the doors on those two particular hatcheries.
How do you plan to continue stocking the streams, though? Because both of those hatcheries are either in central or north central Pennsylvania. They're serving an area, you know, they border each other, so they're serving counties together. How do you plan to continue stocking fish in those general geographic areas?
Well, I want to assure you we're still going to plan to stock those streams, maybe not all the streams that we have historically stocked. And as I explained in my testimony, we've worked with Penn State to come up with a model to determine where the most efficient use of our trout are by local anglers. And there's two variables that correlate very well to highest recreational use of our stock trout. Excuse me. Those are population density, more people, the more people fish for trout, and parking, angler access. But we have destination waters, and some examples would include Kettle Creek, Pine Creek, where people travel to fish for trout. So we're going to take a look at where we get the most efficient use, and the streams where we don't get efficient use, we'll be taking those off the stocking list. So you should expect to see an impact, but we'll be transporting trout around the state from our other hatcheries like we commonly do.
So the short answer is we're going to see less trout stocked in those particular areas, like Potter County, where it's going to take you a long ways to travel to stock trout from another hatchery. I hear you talking about looking at where the most people are fishing, but you can't look at counties, very rural counties like Potter, and look at where the most people are fishing, because there are many streams there to fish, and we certainly don't have the highest population. So I think you have to take a number of factors into consideration, and you know, I'm concerned with what you're saying about the reduced number of stocking. I think that goes against your mission, to be honest with you.
Well, I do too, but you know, based on all the studies that have been done throughout history, and not just Pennsylvania, but Wisconsin, California, Idaho, Wyoming, other states that stock trout, there's never been shown to be a correlation between the number of trout stocked and the number of licenses sold. So, you know, I'm sure there's a tipping point there that's going to have an impact, but when we lower the numbers of fish that we stock historically, we've never seen a response in declining license sales like we do when we increase license fees. So as a result of that, we're hopeful that the anglers will understand that we just can't afford to stock as many trout as we've always stocked. And the reality of it is 750,000 trout just mean that if you look at the population of anglers, we have 800,000 anglers. It's about one trout less per angler, and if you look at the numbers alone, right now we're giving 4 trout per every licensed angler, and that'll take it down to 3 trout. And if you look at studies that we've done, the average angler catches 1.7 trout. So it's still within the range that anglers should not even notice these cuts when they go to visit a trout stream, unless the trout stream comes off the list.
Well, I wasn't tying it directly to license sales, but I do have serious concerns about whether the same number of people in those particular areas will be out fishing. So I have some serious concerns about that. And you and I have talked privately about this. I think the commission handled this situation very poorly. And you know, I think the commission could have been more out front in talking with people, with anglers, with legislators before making a decision by putting out a press release saying that they were going to close these 2 hatcheries. I think it was handled very poorly, and I think that it's something the commission needs to reconsider.